My name is Voss, and I have built my career on being correct. For 31 cycles, I served as the primary threat analyst for the Galactic Sovereignty Council, the most powerful governing body across 4 star systems. I predicted the Thurvian uprising 6 months before the first shot was fired. I identified the Morek Syndicate before they bribed their first senator. By every measurable standard, I was the best in my field. And then, humans happened. Let me describe the situation. It was an ordinary morning aboard the observation station Pale-Eye, orbiting a small, crowded blue planet at a very safe distance. The planet's designation in our records was KE7 Tertiary. The locals called it Earth. Among ourselves, we called it the Loud One, because its electromagnetic spectrum was constantly filled with radio signals, television broadcasts, and an alarming number of competitive cooking programs. We were not worried about Earth. That, I now understand, was our first mistake. The Council classified humanity as a pre-emergent civilization, which is a polite way of saying they were still arguing with each other too much to be a serious concern. They had not achieved faster-than-light travel. They were not unified under a single government. Half of them still debated the shape of their own planet. We had a 47-page report explaining why humanity posed no strategic threat to sovereignty interests, and I personally co-authored 16 of those pages. I was proud of those pages. Then our deep-range sensor officer, a nervous young analyst named Breck, rushed into the observation deck at 400 hours with the expression of someone who had seen something impossible. "Voss," Breck said. His voice carried a tone I had never heard before. It was the voice of someone who had encountered something that could not be categorized. "Breck," I replied calmly. "There are ships," he said. "There are always ships. These ones are not ours." I placed my report on the table. "Then whose ships are they?" Breck activated the display. The sensor grid lit up with 17 contacts dropping out of what appeared to be impossible transit points. Not wormholes, not fold drives, something else. Something our physics department would debate. For months in increasingly hostile research papers, the ships were large but not oversized by sovereignty standards. They were purposeful in design. Whoever built them had clearly understood exactly what they wanted machines to do. There was no decorative plating, no ceremonial wings, only structure, function, and an unsettling number of weapon systems which, our weapons analyst Greyer would later confirm, were real. "Show me the origin point," I said. Breck zoomed the display outward. The ships had arrived from Earth. I stared at the blue planet below. That loud, disorganized, pre-emergent civilization, the species that was still, according to last week's intelligence summary, arguing about how the word data should be pronounced. "They have FTL," I said slowly. "Yes," Breck answered. "When did they develop FTL?" "We do not know." "What do you mean we do not know?" "I mean that 90 days ago, our surveillance confirmed they were still using chemical propulsion rockets to leave their own atmosphere." Silence settled on the observation deck. It had weight. Everyone felt it pressing against their thoughts. Then, one of the 17 ships transmitted a signal. It translated perfectly into sovereignty standard, as if they had spoken our language for years. The message was brief, calm, delivered by a human woman whose voice sounded like she was reading a weather report. "Hello. We are the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We are here to open formal diplomatic relations. Please respond within 6 hours." She paused. "We are not asking twice." I looked at Breck. Breck looked at me. In the back of my mind, all 47 pages of my threat assessment report began to burn quietly. 6 hours is not a long time when you are panicking. I want to be clear that I, Voss, senior threat analyst with 31 cycles of distinguished service, did not panic. What I did was move quickly, speak loudly, and knock over 2 cups of station-brewed Solvec root tea while rushing between terminals. That is not panic. That is urgent professionalism. The council was contacted within the first hour. Supreme Director Halav, who had governed 4 star systems for 2 decades without raising his voice, answered my transmission with the expression of someone who had been woken from a comfortable sleep and told that the furniture was alive. "Say that again, Voss," he said. "Humans, sir. 17 ships. FTL capable. Armed. They are requesting a diplomatic meeting and have given us a 6-hour window." Halav remained silent for 4 seconds. Politically, 4 seconds of silence from Halav was equivalent to another species screaming into a pillow. "How?" he said. It was not exactly a question. It was the sound of a mind realizing that reality had developed a crack. "We are working on that, sir. Work faster." The transmission ended. Very helpful. Deeply reassuring. Our linguistics officer, Taya, had by then collected every intercepted human broadcast from the past decade and was running analysis with the focus of someone who realized they had been doing their job incorrectly for years. She found it within 40 minutes. Buried inside broadcasts we had dismissed as entertainment, humans had been learning not only our language, but also our security protocols, diplomatic formalities, and military response patterns, all hidden inside programs catalogued by our analysts as recreational fiction. "They were watching us," Taya said, her voice flat despite the implication. "We were watching them," I replied. "Yes, but they knew we were watching and they used it." She opened a clip. It was a human drama program, fictional on the surface, but the dialogue contained a near-perfect reproduction of sovereignty docking. "Procedures, Voss," she said. "They trained themselves using our surveillance as a classroom for years, while we wrote reports claiming they were not a threat." I thought about my 47-page report again. I thought about it the way one thinks about something they would prefer to forget permanently. The 6-hour mark arrived. I answered the call. The screen displayed a human face. An older man, calm in a deliberate way that felt almost aggressive. He introduced himself as Fleet Envoy Dano Reyes and smiled the way experienced negotiators smile, with only the mouth. "Analyst Voss," he said, pronouncing my name with exact correct inflection. "Thank you for responding." "Envoy Reyes," I replied. "Your arrival was unexpected." "Was it?" he said. Those 2 words carried an entire argument that I was already losing. "The Council is prepared to discuss terms for diplomatic recognition," I said, following the script approved by Halav 20 minutes earlier. Reyes nodded. "We would like that. We would also like the return of monitoring equipment placed in our solar system without permission. We catalogued 43 sovereignty surveillance installations. We have removed 26 already. We are leaving the rest temporarily as a courtesy, so your council may observe this conversation directly." The observation deck behind me was silent enough that I could hear Breck breathing. He was breathing only slightly. "They were watching us," I said quietly. "Yes," Taya answered. The 6-hour transmission window remained open. "Envoy Reyes," I said. Finally, because someone had to. "How long have you been preparing for this?" He tilted his head slightly. The smile reached somewhere close to genuine. "Voss," he said, "we have been preparing since the first time one of your satellites blinked." The transmission stayed open. The 17 ships held position. And somewhere behind me, very quietly, Breck sat down on the floor. I could not blame him, and the galaxy learned humanity does not declare war. Humanity simply arrives.